Hi everyone. In today's video, we are going to master strings and lists in Python. These two data types are absolutely essential, whether you are building a game, a web application, or a data project. And by the end of this video, you'll confidently work with text and collections of data using Python. So let's jump right in. So first of all, let's start with string. What is a string? A string is a sequence of characters. Actually, it's just text. And you can create one using single quotes, double quotes, or even triple quotes for multi-line. And let's give it an example. So I'm creating a variable named text. And in here, I want to store hello. And if I'm trying to print this, you will see that it will print the text hello, as you can see. You might ask, why should I use double quotes instead of single quotes? So for example, if I want to type something like Botan's car, you see that I'm using this code here. And by that, Python understands that this is the point where my string is ending. So to avoid having this issue, instead of single quotes, I can use double quotes to actually declare this text. The same way it goes, for example, for triple quotes. So if I'm using Botan's car is cool in quotes, as you can see, Python understands that this string will end here. So to avoid having an issue with this, what I can do is actually using triple quotes to tell Python that this is actually a string, and even those quotes are inside my string. And if I print this, it will basically print whatever I have inside those triple quotes. We can also have string indexing and string slicing. String works like a list of characters. You can access each letter using indexes. Let me give you an example. So for example, if I have this text, we can access each letter by using the index of that letter. So if I have, for example, this my name here, this would mean that B it's index 0, O it's index 1, G it's index 2, D it's index 3, 4, and 5. If I'm trying to access, for example, B from this text, I'm going to print text, and we have this square brackets where I have to pass the index of the character I want. In our case, if I want to take B, I'm going to use 0. And if I'm printing this, you will see that this will print only B. The same way goes if I want to take the last element. We can negatively give the index. So let's, for example, give -1. And what do you think this is going to print? It is exactly the n, right? Because I'm trying to going from the reverse. As you can see, it's printing the n. Also, this is indexing. But also we have slicing, which works like this. It has the syntax that is using the same thing like square brackets, but we have here start, colon, stop, colon, step. This is the syntax. So if I want to print, for example, the first two characters of the string, I'm going to print text, and in the square brackets, I have to give a start, which in my case would be 0, or I can even leave it empty, colon, stop. I want to stop to the second character, but make sure that you notice this start is going to be implicit, but stop is going to be explicit. I'm just telling him that I want to take the first two characters, but considering that it starts from 0, I have to give him the last character plus 1. So for example, if I want to take B and O, I'm going to give as a stop the G index. So let's see how this works. As you can see, even if I gave him 2, it will stop right before that. I can also give a step, for example. Let's say I want to take all the elements. So I'm not giving a start, I'm not giving a stop, but I'm giving a step. So this step means how much should the program jump when taking the letters. So if I'm saying 2, you will see that it will take B, skip O, take G, skip D, take A, and skip N. So it's taking each two element. Now, the step, as you probably noticed, it's optional. So if you don't give any step, it will by default take 1 as value. So I can just give, for example, 1 to 3, and this will give me the second element, which is 1, 2, and 3 is not going to be included. So this will print only O and G. Let's see. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. We also have string methods. I'm going to show you a few of them, but then you can go into Tree School. I will leave a link in the comment section so you can take a look at that. So let's say I have this example, and now I want for this one to make all the characters uppercases. So there is a method which says text.upper, which is the method, This is actually a function, so we have to pass even if we don't have any argument. And this will basically print my name, but in full capital, right? Another method, it would be lower, for example. If this one, even if I have most of the characters lower, it will look for any uppercase character and it will make it lower as well. So in this case, you see even the B now has lowercase. Let's say if I want to check if a string starts with a specific character, for example, if my name starts with, and in here I have to also pass an argument. So in this case, I want to see if my name starts with B. If I'm printing this, it will return a boolean which says true, because my name is actually starting with B. If I want to test if my name starts with A, it will send false, because obviously my name does not start with A. These methods don't change the original string. Strings are also immutable. So what does that mean? If I'm trying to replace the first element from my text, so let's go with text and take the first element. I want to equal this to A. If I'm trying to do this, which basically would replace the first element, which is B in my case, with an A, you will see that this is going to throw an error because it's not supported. So this is why strings are called immutable. They cannot change once you create them. Another cool thing about string, it is that we can also format strings. So we have string formatting, and there are two main ways to format a string in Python. Let's say, for example, my name is Bogdan and I have 28 years old. And I want to print here using the first method, I would say, which is a formatted string, an F string, which is the most common one, and it is also the modern way of doing this. And I can say my name is, and in here I can use these brackets to pass a variable name, which in my case is text, because text is holding my name, and I am, and I will give my age here. So if I'm printing this, you will see that it says my name is Bogdan and I'm 28. Now, if I change these here with completely different values, you will see by running this, I will get exactly what I want. Another method would be, let's get rid of this, and another method would be using format. This format function is helping us to format the string without the fstring method. So let's see if I want to print my name is, and in here I have to pass the brackets, but I'm not writing anything inside them. And at the end of the string, what I'm gonna do is type that format, and in here I have to pass name and age. I mean, not name, sorry, text. Let's replace this with name because it's slightly confusing. Now, this method is also good, but you see, I'm only having two variables that I want to pass inside my string. Imagine I have many more, over 10. I have to make sure I keep the same order. So for example, if I'm going to print this, this will print my name is Bogdan and I'm 30. But if I replace this with a different order, you will see that this is going to reverse whatever I'm typing here. So my name is 30 and I'm Bogdan. This is not quite good, right? So we want to make sure using this method, we have to respect the order that we pass these brackets inside the string. And the last method that I'm going to show you is using the oldest version of formatting, which is using this symbol. So for example, my name is, and I'm passing this along with an S, and let's say I am another thing, which is, for example, D here, years old. So after that, I have to pass this sign, and in brackets, I have to pass name. In parentheses, I have to pass name, and then age. And this is going to do the same thing, right? This is going to print the same thing. My name is Bogdan and I'm 30 years old. This is even more confusing. This is an old way, and I don't recommend using or getting used to any of these. I think the first method, it's one that it's also recommended, at least in Python 3.6 or above. Now that we know all these things about strings, let's actually see what is the use case of them. So let's create here a cool example. So we have email, which is, let's say, for example, user around example.com. And for example, I want to check if this email is a valid email, right? Because every single website has this check. So I'm going to use an if statement, and I'm going to check if we have an around in my email. And I also want to check if the email ends with .com or something, and I'm going to use an operator here, and email. And we learned about starts with, but we also have ends with, which is another method that checks if a specific string, in our case, ends with a specific substring. So I'm going to use ends with, and here I'm passing the parameter, which is .com in my case. So I'm using the colon, and if this is right, I'm going to print this is a valid email. So let's see if I print this. This is going to print this is a valid email. Why? Because both of these conditions are okay and will return true. But let's say I'm sending this .net, and you will see that this is not going to print anything else. So this is a cool check that we can do using strings. Another thing that we can do is, for example, words equal to, say, hello. Let's write here an ugly string. And I want this to use a method which is called strip, and another method over this which is split. What this is going to do is, if I'm printing now words, you will see that this is going to create me a list that has each word as an element. We did not learn yet about lists, but this is a powerful and cool thing that we can do with strings. Now that we know a lot about strings, let's go and deep dive into lists. So list is an ordered collection of items, like a shopping list, for example, and you can create it using square brackets. Let's give it an example. So we have a variable named fruits, and in here I want to store some fruits like apple, banana, and let's say one more, cherry. Now, as you can see, we have multiple elements in a list. Compared to a string, now each element has its own index. Let's give it an example. So if I want to take the first element of the list, this is going to be apple. If I want to take the second element, this is going to be banana. And the same for cherry. Now, as you can see, we no longer get each character, but now we get each item of the list, which is separated by comma. As you probably guessed, we also have indexing and slicing, because obviously we have these indexes. But before that, I want to tell you that the difference between them is also that fruits are mutable. What does that mean? Well, let's try to change apple to something else. Let's say fruits of 0, because apple it's the first element, it's equal to kiwi. And if I'm going to print fruits now, you will see that this is going to print kiwi instead of apple. So this is why lists are called mutable. But now let's talk about indexing and slicing, because it has exactly the same syntax and logic as it has for strings, but instead of character, we get the item. So let's give it an example. So let's take, for example, banana from the fruits. So if I want to print banana, I'm going to print fruits, and I'm going to pass in the square brackets the index of that element. In our case, banana, it's at index 1. If I'm going to print this, you will see that banana is going to be printed. Now, let's combine them and let's try to get the B from banana. What I have to do is, if I'm printing this, which is already banana, imagine that this right here is actually banana. And if I want to take first element of banana by doing this, then imagine you replaced banana with this and add another indexing. And as you can see, if I'm printing this, it will print just the B. So this is basically a double indexing, I would say. And the same goes, for example, for slicing. If I want to take the first elements from the list, I'm going to give, let's use, for example, 0, but we can also leave it empty, but let's take it 0. And I want, for example, to take the first two elements. What I mentioned before, and I want to reiterate, is that the stop parameter here is going to be explicit. So if I want to take banana, I must give banana index plus 1, which is 2. So if I want to include everything, if I want to include the first two elements, I'm going to pass it like this. And let's see if this works. As you can see, we get a sublist of the list that contains only the first two characters, because we've been doing slicing. It is very similar, right? But let's see what are some methods of the list, because obviously the methods are completely different. So let's say, for example, if I want to add an element on the list, I can use either append method, which is basically a method that adds at the end of the list, as the definition says here, and I'm going to pass the element that I want to add, which is in my case kiwi. For example, if I want to add another fruit, but between apple and banana, there is another method which I can use, which is insert. This one, it says insert object before index, and I have to pass index and also the object. So first I have to pass the index, which let's say it's 1. As the definition says, before the index, it will be added before index 1, which means before banana. So it will be between apple and banana. And let's add here a pear. And let me see if we have these work. As you can see, pear was added between banana and apple, and kiwi was added at the end. We can also remove elements from the list, which is going to work like this. And in here, it says remove first occurrence of value. So if I want to remove, for example, the kiwi, then I have to pass the value, and it will remove the first element that is going to match my parameter. And if I print fruits again, you will see that even if we added kiwi here, we also removed it. So now my final list would not have kiwi as part of the list. We can also have sort. For example, fruits.sort, which is basically sorting the fruits. Now, if I'm trying to print the fruits, you will see that the list has a slightly different order. Now, banana will be the second element instead of pear because it is B, and then we have cherry, and the last one will become pear. We can also use len, sum, max, min. There are many more which you can find on Iterate School. So there is no need to keep going with our examples right here. Something that I didn't show you using strings, but I want to start showing you now, it is that we can iterate through this sequence of characters. Let's say, for example, I want to go over each element in this list, and I can do that by using a for loop. And I'm saying for fruit in fruits, I'm going to print each fruit. And this is going to take apple, we'll assign the apple to this fruit variable, and it will print the fruit variable which has the apple assigned. After that, it will go to the next element, which is banana. Banana will be stored in the fruit variable, and that variable will be printed, so banana will be printed, and so on. If I'm doing this, you will see that it will print each element of the list one after another. This is very good to go over a list. We can do the same thing for strings, for example. If I'm going to create a string here and try to print this, you will see that it will print each character because now, as I mentioned, each character has its own index. This works great for displaying or filtering data. And we also have something that is called list comprehension, which is a little bit more complex, and it's only applicable for lists, as it's called list comprehension. And we can do, instead of for loops, we can do single line code that creates a list with some conditions. So for example, if I have squares here, then I'm creating a list and I'm saying x multiplied by x, because this is the square, right? For, and here I can tell x in range, which basically means for every single value that is in this range that I'm giving. So I'm giving a range from 1 to 6. Remember, this is implicit, this is explicit, so this is going to only go from 1 to 5 actually. So if I'm printing squares, you will see that it will print 1, 4, 9, 16, and 25, which means basically 1 multiplied by 1, it's 1, 2 multiplied by 2, it's 4, 3 multiplied by 3, it's 9, and so on. So this is list comprehension. It is slightly more advanced and might look complicated for you now, but it is much cleaner than using loops and very readable once you get used to it. And the last thing I want to cover in today's video is actually nested lists and their use case. You can even store lists inside lists, like a 2D grid, for example, or a table. Let's create a matrix, for example, where I'm going to create a list, and inside this list, I'm going to create another list which has 1, 2, 3, and after that, the second element would be 4, 5, 6. So in this case, for example, if I'm going to print using slicing, print matrix of 0, this is going to print the first sublist of the list, which is this one. This is perfect for things like game boards, rows of data, or Excel-like tables. So to recap, today we learned how strings are used and manipulated, how lists help store and process collections, tons of useful methods, formatting, slicing, and looping. And if this is helpful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more hands-on Python tutorials, and give me some feedback about this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.